Hey everyone, I just want to make a quick video on the state of where we are and the markets and China. And I started calling it how to destabilize a country, but it's really how to destabilize the world. And it's when our middle class is getting squeezed, everything's breaking. And that's really kind of what this whole thing is about. So this is gold. It's on a nine right now. That it's a long story, but I can explain that in a different video. But so we're probably gonna have a little bit of a slowdown for maybe 1, 2 weeks, and I don't expect it to go down any major corrections because things are getting worse. And I can kind of show you, first of all, why gold is going up. When they took us off the gold reserve years ago, we held 200, well, I don't know how many we had then, but now we have 261 million ounces of gold. And price is 4,250 an ounce. So that equals 1.1 trillion in reserves, which was supposed to back our dollar. Once they took it off, they printed. Now we have 35 trillion in debt, and gold would need to equal $134,000 an ounce to back the debt today. So if they never took us off the gold standard, in order to print all that money, gold would have to be at $134,000. So right now we're 3.2% backed, which is like nothing. So if you imagine you go to buy a house, they make you put 20% down. We don't even have 3.5%. So that's why gold is doing what it's doing. And this blue box is just because I went back to Easter the other day. I was thinking about a conversation I had with a person at Easter that had their whole life savings in P&G stock. And I told them they should buy gold, and they laughed at me and said, "No, I'm going to stick to my company stock." And so since then, gold's up 134%, and their P&G stock is up 7.37%. Yeah, over the course of time, they did well because they stuck with it forever. But 10 years, they've gone up 100%, 10 years roughly. So anyway, that's why I have this blue on here right now. But I just wanted to show what was happening in the gold market because people don't understand why it's important, because it's not the dollar, or it's not the value of gold is going up. It's the value of our dollar that's showing itself. And everybody around the world now is not interested in using our dollar as much as they used to. And now we're down to 54% of, I think, all the trade in the world was done with US dollars last year, where it used to be in the 68 or 70% range. So it's falling off. And now the blockchain's here. It's the whole purpose is, people are saying, hey, we're going to switch to the BRICS nations and we're going to have our own currencies. And so that's why you're seeing that. And it might take a little bit of a break, but that's why you see these gold commercials and all these people talking about gold's going to go to 10,000. But right now, if we were just trying to cover 20% of our debt, it would be at 25,000. So that's a 6 times return if it ever did that. But I'm not saying it's going up that high. I'm not a financial advisor either, by the way. It used to be. So gold and silver are both hitting nines right now on the weekly, which is a pretty hardcore thing. If you look through all my charts, you can see all these peaks are always nines, like the major ones. This chart's not as much. You can see them though, 999. But I don't even really know about the gold. You can see through here, 999. There's always a pullback after the nines. Boom. It's just an algorithm I use. You can see here, 999. It's an algorithm I can explain later in another video. But basically, now we're looking at silver. Same thing. It's up 150% roughly since Easter in 2023. And people are calling for that to go to 100. And I don't know if that's going to happen either. Just throwing that out there. But the whole purpose is these prices are going up. And then Bitcoin, everyone's always worried about putting their money in Bitcoin. But if you go back to Easter of 2023, Bitcoin's up 382.4%. Interesting. So, right now it just crossed. You can go, I sort of map these out from old highs through, sort of touch as many as I can. And then same thing starting when it switched from this green box to the jumping out of it basically right here to where it finalized all these touch points it needed to touch before it could take off. So then it ran up, and now we're sort of working up here, and it just got over the long term, but it couldn't hold it. So now right now it's down in this point where the Bollinger Bands, it's right at the center line, and it's touched the bottom already. So it's probably just going to kind of weave in and out of here until something major happens, either good or bad with the markets. But it's not coming down to like 20,000 again. That's never going to happen. It's coming down to maybe 90, maybe 70 if things get really bad for some crazy reason on the entire stock market. But I expect it to, change and decouple from the markets, because that's what it's been doing now since it's kind of matured a little bit and people have realized they can put their money in it, and it's a way better bet. They can get in and out of it faster too than our currency. So those are just a couple things I wanted to point out to some people that care about crypto, care about gold, silver, and you can see here where we are. But It could come down to this Bollinger Band here again quickly this week, but the key is once it gets above here and builds some traction and touches all these points it needs to, which it did already. It came down here and touched. It's come back up, and really there's no loose ends through here that it needs to come back and touch. But if it was following the averages, it may come down and boing, boing, boing through here. But I suspect by next year, it's going to be, up in the 140, 150. And then it's sort of depending on everything else that's going on with China, which, I don't know if you paid attention to China lately, but today they just arrested a bunch of Christian priests and around churches, and then they expelled 9 of their officials because their anti-corruption drive, who knows what that means, but they basically are a mess, and they've started this war with tariffs with Trump because they've tried to hold back on all the raw materials that we need for everything pretty much that runs the world now, because you got AI coming in and it's replacing everybody's jobs, customer service, marketing, and coding. And we're lying about our job market. These are my other slides that I made. Everyone needs a couple gigs to survive now, and AI is not making it any easier on people because, I have friends that have companies that are hurting right now just because of, they do marketing. And I just finished a couple $100,000 worth of work myself building out my site. And I didn't need the front end guy. I didn't need a design guy. I didn't need anybody to make videos and do all the things that I did, created all the everything myself, saved a couple $100,000. And that's happening everywhere. And we're sort of starting to see it trickle through. And now, China, they're like 70% of the rare earth processing around the world. And they have 90% of the semiconductors in Taiwan. So there's a major hiccup that could happen with them if they keep pushing and keep pushing. And then we have the immigration impact on wages, and there's so many people, don't have low paying jobs anymore. So that's another problem. And then our stock market is concentrated in 7 companies, pretty much 30% of the S&P is in these 7, which are all, controlling us completely. I mean, it's insane. So we're all pumping our money into it, keeping their stocks up in the dot-com bubble, which I lived through. And there was only 10% or 10 of them were the top 25% at the time, which was a little bit, less concentrated, but it didn't matter. And if you want to go back and look at that, how crazy those days were, this is a good chart to check out because this is the triple Qs. This is the tech stocks, basically. And if you look back at dot-com bubble, this is where we were, and it crashed, and then it took a long time to recover. And then we had the banking crisis right here, and that's where the market was. It's insane. So we lost 50% from that point. The triple Qs was at 55, and then it went down to 25 in the banking crisis. And then from there, here we are. We had the lockdowns. They printed a shit ton of money, and then we had the banks. A bunch of 3 banks failed, and they printed a bunch of money. And here we go. And now we just hit a giant 9 at the top. I was talking about this the other day, where it was interesting how the numbers worked out, but we may have hit the top. That's hard for me to tell because I've been expecting it for a long time. I thought it was going to crash a year ago, but it just keeps on. They keep printing, and it's like this big fake Monopoly game that we're playing that gets worse and worse and worse every day, because the farther this goes up, the more pain later. And people are not into. They just don't understand that if this falls 50%, look at this. This is the bank crisis. Remember how bad that was? Fell 50% here. And this is it was just not even ballooned up like it now. It's just fake money all got put into the markets. Everybody else is starving, and dollar is worth shit, and everybody's like, you can't buy food because it's so expensive to go out. It's inflation lie is just, oh yeah, everything's only 3% more expensive. It's all a lie, because we all know that we go out and eat, and you can't afford to take your kids to, and even fast food, it adds up so fast now. So anyway, here's our dollar going. It went up in the 80s, and it dropped because we did that on purpose, because we wanted to deflate our dollar versus Japan and Germany, which really buried Japan because their markets were so high, and then they fell, and they've been down for 30 years since then. I don't know if that was that year that it happened, but that's what we did. We hurt Japan doing that, but our dollar fell, which made things so we could export things. And then eventually it came back up to this line and then fell back down again. And now here we are. We hit it again. Another 9. You can see all the 9s popping up on these points. So right now, here we are at 98. And I track, I was doing a lot of work in Switzerland, so I was using the Swiss franc, and this is what our dollar did to their dollar. They got more expensive basically. So to do work there at this rate where it is right now, 0.79, every dollar you have to pay $1.20 basically to do anything with anyone from Switzerland. So it's gotten more expensive to do anything in other countries if they have a decent dollar. They just haven't printed as much money as everybody else. So our dollar's weak compared to their dollar. So anyway, that's an interesting thing to look at. Just wanted to kind of point out some of the things that I look at every day and understand that eventually these prices are coming down. Everything's been overvalued. Real estate's not in a good position. Banks aren't in a good position. Trade war could cause a major problem, and anything really could knock us into a battle here. So I realized I forgot to talk about XRP, which a lot of people asked me about. So it's a totally different chart than everybody else's because they were sued by the government. So back here, it just never. Once they got sued, I don't know what year it was, but it's been going on since 2020, I think. Anyway, that happened, and they didn't go through the rise that everybody else did. You can see they're low here. I just sort of tried to keep it touching everything. And basically, it's gone through a little bit of a change, but it's still being suppressed. And they keep signing new things. They just bought something called G Trade this week, which is a huge company. They paid $1 billion for them, and it's tied to JP Morgan and Subway and all their payments and tons of different things. They move money around through this G Trade. And so Ripple just bought them. So there's a lot coming. They have, I think I just saw they had 1,700 NDAs under contract, which with different companies around the world, banks and people that they can't talk about. So one day it's all going to drop like a freaking hammer. But I don't think $2.50. If it does drop, a lot of people get lucky and be able to buy it. But you can see what happened there today when the markets crashed for an hour. So if you notice this high, there's a lot of there wasn't many people that bought it up here, but when it crashed, it went down here, and then everybody was buying it at 50 cents. And then when it went flying up, it filled this gap because there's a lot going on down here. But from here to here, it never really had a lot of buyers. So it always comes back. It's just how it works. So it kind of went up here and followed that top line, boom, boom. But it kind of came down, shot up the other day, and now it actually filled this gap, but it did it in an hour. So I don't know if it's going to come back down here again, but it is past the middle Bollinger Band, the green one. It crossed it and came back. So if anything, this thing will sort of taper up this way and it'll sort of come back. But I think it's going to be, $10, no problem in a matter of 6 months or less, maybe a year. But it really just depends on the rollout of everything because stable coins are now in play. And they have a stable coin too. And so the whole fixing all these other problems that they can come up with, they've kind of got it mapped out more than anybody else in the world, really. And they're working with all the biggest banks and the IMF and all these people know, and they actually are going to go against Swift. It looks like because that's G Trade that they bought just kind of replaces Swift in some ways that they can work it out. It's pretty crazy. So don't worry about XRP. Just sit on it. If it drops, buy more. I would say they made it past the hard part in the courts, and now it's just a matter of playing out all the bullshit. This was just such garbage that it was up here, and then they literally, in a matter of no time, they dropped it down and crushed everybody that had any kind of a sell order in. And when it hit, they had people having just insurance on it. Plus, they had people that were 2x, 3x, 20x margined. They get wiped out when it just drops a little bit. So they know that. It's how it works now that it's in the hands of the bigger players. But I just think it needed to hit there anyway. You can see my line was exact. I didn't put this line in. This was in any of my old videos. You can look at any of them. I actually had this line in there. That just happened. And it was because I had it in here because of this. And that went back to where this thing broke out, came back down. It just kind of worked when I did it a long time ago because of this top two. It's just sort of ends up touching everything is what I was trying to do. So, then it kind of always, I can look back and see like it didn't do much here. This was just very few people traded it here. And then once it got past that line, once it got past this was crazy, but it shot up right past this line, even bigger. You can see that it sort of did. So that's a long story short. This is going to be at the end of the video. So whatever, if you made it this far, maybe I'll separate this video from the other video. But that's what I got with that. I don't think there's anything else anyone cares that much about. Chainlink and HBAR, I keep telling everybody they're going to be big, and they are. And they are just puttering around, waiting for everything to turn on. Really, I mean, all you gotta do is look around and see who's getting in the game now. And these guys are behind the scenes working with everybody, all the big banks, Ripple, and they interchange and use each other too. But so I H bar, I don't really have much to say about it. Just hang in if you own it. I definitely think it's coming. It's just people don't even know what it is yet. Honestly, it's just like me building fishies. People are just like, oh yeah, whatever, it's coming. It's like, yeah, it is. This is Solana. I've never owned any Solana, honestly. I never got it. I didn't look at it hardcore at all because it was breaking a lot when I first started looking at different things, and I chose the Ethereum chain base to build on instead. But their pricing is all over the place. They go all over. So I don't really have anything to say about it. They're right at the middle Bollinger Band too. So they're probably going to come back up to 246, I would say, unless shit falls off with Bitcoin. Everything follows Bitcoin. It doesn't really matter. I mean, once Bitcoin takes a big leap and everything else will follow, it's really just a matter of what's going to happen from here with the trade wars and shit. And I expect if the markets crash and we get into November and we keep the trade war thing going, that Bitcoin is going to fall too. It'll probably come down and tap one of these lines first, scare people. But then I think it takes off, maybe down to 70, like I said earlier in the other video. But that's where I think this is going to be. And everything follows Bitcoin. So whatever you own in crypto follows Bitcoin for the most part, except for Ripple, because Ripple got sued. And now they're just trying to catch up to everybody else. And they will, because they've got more power than any other crypto does besides Bitcoin, I would say. Ethereum does too. But when I say power, they're just dealing with the regulators and banks and all those people. Anyway, all right, that was too long. Maybe I'll speed it up on 1.25 for you.